Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say, following the 3 H's of the channel and all that great stuff. And in this video, I got stuff from all over the place. Montana, southern Colorado, Kentucky, the Middle East, like Palestine and Mosul. If that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. An old friend of mine told me this one. He got a job writing for a local newspaper. He was doing a piece on local logging history and was researching about it. He decides to write on an old mountain man from local lore. Now, there was a place that he was said to inhabit, so he takes his vehicle up there, and suddenly, when he gets right around the area, the vehicle just dies, completely shuts off. No power, no anything. Everything goes completely still. He was there with somebody else at the paper who he made friends with. He said you could feel the fear in the vehicle. They look at each other. They can both read the WTF expression on each other's faces. It's completely dark out. They're in the trees. And now the vehicle dies. Then suddenly, a green, strange light appears in the trees. It moves through the ridgeline, and it makes a circle where the vehicle is parked. They don't move, they don't speak, they don't think. It leaves, and the vehicle instantly comes back to life without them turning on the ignition. They just turn around and leave, thinking that that's enough for them to write their article on. This would have taken place sometime in the 40s or the 50s. He chalked it up to the old mountain man's apparition. He was a quite rational man his whole life. He was a tough-as-nails old-timer. I figured maybe you'd like to hear some folklore. So I don't know if I could attribute this to anything Native American related, although I do live in the Greenhorn Valley in southern Colorado. Numerous battles and other such things between the natives and the Spanish army went down around here. So myself and my friend are hanging out. We decide we want to walk to the gas station that's about 2 miles away to get a drink. We have to walk down the highway. This park is the site where it is believed that Chief Cuerno Verde was defeated and killed in a battle with the Spaniards. We were rounding the highway toward the gas station when we notice that the night has gone completely silent. We can't hear crickets. We can't hear any of the animals that are around the area. We brush it off initially and just keep walking. At this point, we can see a big light-up sign for the gas station. There's a hill in front of us. It's between us and the gas station. So this sign appears to be resting on top of the hill. We were both looking up at the sign when we see what I can only call a creature. It's bipedal. No big deal, right? But it appears to be hairy all over its body, like matted fur. Keep in mind, all we can really be sure of is a silhouette. The biggest thing that scared me about this thing was its legs. Its knees were bending in the wrong way, like a satyr or something like that. Being a teenager, walking at 3 a.m. down a road with only a single streetlight, that was easily the scariest thing I'd ever seen at the time. We sprint our asses the entire way to the gas station, which was about half a mile. We stay there for maybe 20 minutes catching our breath and working up the courage to start the walk back. On our way back, we notice that the streetlight on the way back to my friend's house has gone out. We use our phones as lights. We never saw it again, but along the way, we could hear what I could only describe as half howl, half hoot type noises, as well as a strange breathing sound coming from the bushes off the road. At some point, I swear I could hear something walking on the road just out of the light behind us. Shortly after that, I was able to get a car, so I didn't have to deal with that anymore. This happened one time when I went hunting by myself. For most of the day, I was searching around and finding absolutely nothing but small squirrels and other small game that I wouldn't waste a bullet on. So I hop in my golf cart ATV and I headed north, a lot deeper than I usually go and am advised on by my dad. He would always say something to the effect of, "There's some weird stuff in those woods, son. It'd be best if you stayed out of them." Now, I always figured that he said that because I was a kid, and I thought to myself, I'm old enough to protect myself now. I'm not a kid anymore. I drive up through the trails, then I park off to the side. I walk into the trees a bit, and I still can't find anything. I wander on for a bit, thinking that I might get lucky, or at the very least, I'm enjoying a nature walk. Soon, a pungent smell hits my nostrils. A dead animal. There's a kill site nearby. I ready my AR, I crouch, and I walk toward the smell. I hear this wet, smacking, crunching sound. I stumble upon the area and, my God, there were dead woodland creatures, mutilated beyond recognition, tied to trees, dried blood and entrails pooled at the bottom. In the center is some deliverance-looking guy, wearing nothing but long johns, underwear, and boots. He's covered in blood, stabbing the shit out of a deer carcass. This wasn't harvesting meat. This was just pure mutilation. He's also on top of it while cutting, like he's hugging it. I openly say, "What the F?" before I can stop myself. His head snaps to me instantly, like one of those terrible horror movies, and he starts walking toward me. He has a total deadpan expression. I shoulder my AR. I shout at him to back off. We then have what is essentially a good, bad, and the ugly stare down. Then I start to back up and walk away. My gun is still drawn on him. When I reach a safe distance, I just run to my ATV, and when I do reach it, I see him come barreling through the woods, holding a homemade spear. There's no time to turn around. I just hit reverse for a good 25 yards while he runs down the road at me. With the breathing room that I have, I try and do a U-turn and get stuck. Literally something out of a horror movie. I take out my Glock 20 and frantically try to unscrew myself while Jeffrey Dahmer himself is coming at me. I get out. He's within 15 feet of me. I drive home, and I just follow my dad's advice and don't go to that area of the woods. Kentucky, ladies and gentlemen. When I was in Mosul, we were on a night op. We had to go to a small police outpost with my lieutenant and had to talk to somebody inside. It was late, maybe between midnight and 2 a.m. He was inside the building for hours, and everyone else was outside in the Humvees pulling security. My whole Vic was asleep, including the TC and gunner who was in the back seat behind the TC. I look out the window and up at the sky because you could see so clearly due to the location, the weather, and the blackout that we enforced at night. While I was looking around, I noticed it was super cold, a weird cold. I also noticed a section of the sky where there were no stars. I popped my NODs down, and I noticed a huge triangle just sitting in the sky. It seemed to be about 300 meters away, and maybe about twice as high in altitude. It was super low, and it didn't move at all, made no noise, and had 3 lights on it, one in each corner of the triangle, and it was about the size of a football field. The lights were only visible through infrared. Without my NODs, it was the same color as the night sky, and the lights were invisible. It blew my mind. I just stuck in the sky like that. No movement, no sound. I woke up the gunner, and he saw it, and we woke up our sergeant. He looked at it and said, "Huh, I have no clue what that is," and then called the lieutenant and racked back out. When the lieutenant came out, he saw it and confirmed it, but said that it's gotta be something way above our level, but also mentioned that it was weird how it was only visible through NODs. When we started to load up and roll out, I gave one last look. It was just gone. No noise at all. I tried to take a photo, but it just shows one light because, it was a crappy photo. I think they have stuff that is decades ahead of what we have, and they have craft that most people would call UFOs, or are UFOs. Years later, after I got out, I saw the TR-3B patents. Whatever it is, it must have some sort of electromagnetic effect that does something to distort light. That's why a lot of UFO photos are blurry or just balls of light. I'm not much of a believer in aliens, but I guess you never know. So I worked in Palestine for a time, helping victims of war, and I have quite a few small paranormal tales, but I figure for now I would just share the most lengthy one. I was staying with a Palestinian family and helping their daughter who was suffering from pneumonia, and her lungs were really badly damaged by inhaling smoke and dust after an Israeli bombing. She wasn't going to live much longer, and the whole family knew it. It was depressing to watch, but late one night, while I was sitting with her, making sure her breathing was stable, I heard a rustling and a whispering from just outside the window on the other side of her room. I get up to go investigate. The whispering immediately tipped me off that it wasn't a stray cat or a dog. I peeked out through the window to see what was there. Immediately, I felt like that I had become aware of some kind of presence, I guess is the best word. Like that feeling of standing in a room with someone, but not looking at them, but being aware of where they are. I heard the whisper again, rather clearly. It was the name of the little girl. It sounded like it was coming from all directions. I was looking back and forth, absolutely befuddled by where it could be coming from. And then, a sinking realization hit me. The mom of the family had talked about experiencing something similar, and always said that it was the Djinn, or a genie. And I had overheard her multiple times reciting prayer from the Quran out loud because she had heard the Djinn. I couldn't remember what the prayers were in the moment, and I called out, asking who was there, hoping that maybe it was just some neighbor kid. But then I heard a whisper from behind me, and I immediately shot around before I could even register what was being said, and I saw a dark cloud in the corner of the room quickly dissipate. I was firmly freaked the F out. I sat down with the little girl again to make sure that at least she would be safe. And then it chose to appear to me. It crawled out from the shadows on all fours, all black with matted, shaggy fur, I guess is the best word. Really more like overgrown body hair, and tusks sticking out the side of its mouth. I was absolutely petrified, and it called my name in a hushed groan, over and over, until I nodded reluctantly, barely being able to move my head. It offered me a deal. I give one of my legs, and the girl makes a perfect recovery. I don't, and the girl dies the next morning. I was panicked, and I was praying internally that this was a dream or some kind of sleep deprivation hallucination. I felt my mouth moving, and I heard myself agree, even though I had absolutely no control of my own body. The Djinn chuckled to himself and stood up, towering over me, and his head almost reaching the ceiling of the room. He grinned a crooked grin at me before falling backwards and vanishing into the same dark cloud as before. I felt the control over my body return as I scrambled to grab the trash can in the room to throw up. The little girl in the bed was awoken by me scrambling to throw up and was dazed and confused, asking me if I was all right and what was going on. I wiped my mouth and I told her it was nothing. I just dozed off and had a nightmare. The following week, the girl made a miraculous recovery. Even the doctors at the hospital were stunned. Her lungs weren't even scarred. They were absolutely perfect, even though they had been failing just days beforehand. I still felt that sinking, creeping dread in me about how I promised my leg to the Djinn for her life, and it wouldn't be until many years later that it would catch up to me. Around the time it did, I was living somewhere in Saudi Arabia. The exact events of how I lost my leg are kind of blurred, especially to me. Even the doctors who saved my life didn't know what had happened. The long and short is that I had gotten into some kind of freak automobile accident, my right leg being the only thing hit, but the bones in it snapping so violently that there would be absolutely no way for my leg to be repaired, let alone heal naturally. I opted to have it amputated and took a small loan to get a prosthetic leg. That's all for now. I might share other stories in the future. I guess I do have another one I can tell you. This is another Djinn story. This was one time when I was living in Egypt. It's a bit lighter in nature. So I was living in Egypt, as I said before, just trying to learn a little more about the culture and its customs. I just got home from a late night walk. I live in a big apartment complex. A family that lives right next to me calls me in for something. The guy at the door, who I believe was the father of the family, wants to show me something. I was a little sketched out, as I had not ever spoken to these people, and I ask if it's okay if I just watch from the doorway. He says it is, and he's pretty calm about it. And I stand in the doorframe, watching whatever's going on inside. There's this small Barbie doll thing, or maybe a Barbie doll knockoff, standing on top of the coffee table by itself, dancing. It's moving in all sorts of weird ways that aren't normal. It doesn't even have joints there. The dad's kids are huddled in the corner of the room, absolutely terrified, visibly shaking and so scared that they aren't even making a sound. The dad, however, is completely nonchalant about it. He grabs a copy of the Quran from the bookshelf and starts shouting at the doll. Suddenly, the book is ripped out of his hands by some unseen force, and in the process, slaps the doll out of the air. The doll breaks into pieces and scatters on the floor. I am in complete disbelief at what has unfolded before me. The father shouts a few more prayers at the pieces of the doll before sweeping it up and throwing it out the window. A lot of paranormal encounters that I've had all go like this. I have one more for you, and this is maybe closer to actual spooks and not just jinn. But again, the people that I've been around are pretty much chads whenever dealing with things that are supernatural or odd happenings. So, this one comes from Palestine again. I was riding with a few ex-Hamas guys, just hanging out, listening to their stories. They were nice fellows. It was getting late, and we were pretty far from the urban areas of Palestine. We decided it was time to head back, but night approached much faster than any of us expected. It was pitch black out for some reason. It just kind of happened all of a sudden, but it was only about 9 p.m. While we were all riding back in this really terrible kind of shackle pickup truck that was owned by one of the ex-Hamas guys. Now, this truck broke down. Curses and groans were shared among everybody as we gathered around to try and fix it. Thankfully, a few of us had brought flashlights, and of course, this guy, Hamas bro, I guess I'll call him, had tools on hand. So while he was fixing it, whatever was wrong with it, I don't quite remember, this loud, hyena-like cackle rang out across the hills. We weren't too taken aback, as striped hyenas are actually native to the West Bank, but something about the cackle sounded way too loud for a hyena, almost human. I told Hamas bro about it. He shrugged it off and casually remarked, "Could be a ghoul, I don't know." His sheer I don't care attitude calmed my concerns in a weird way, but I was still nervous about whatever had made the sound. Once we had gotten the truck fixed, we continued our drive, but Hamas bro slammed on the brakes and started shouting in Arabic that there was something in the road. I was startled, but everyone else in the truck was really more annoyed than anything. But they were still standing up and beginning to shout at whatever was in the road. I peeked above the top of the truck to get a look at just what the hell's going on. It looked a whole lot like the Djinn that I had encountered when I was taking care of the Palestinian girl, but it seemed a lot bigger, more ape-like, more animalistic. It began beating its chest, howling in response to this absolute chaos. Hamas bro gets out of the truck with a pocket copy of the Quran, brandishing it like he's about to wallop this thing with it, all the while still shouting verses in unison with everyone else. I joined in with what very little Arabic I knew, and whatever this thing was, hissed in pain and sprinted off on all fours. The small burst of adrenaline wore off, and I was left completely and absolutely bewildered at what had just happened. When I asked my friend about it, he just shrugged and said, "Ghouls, I guess," like it was just another regular, everyday encounter to him. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own, or would you like to donate to the channel? I have an email and links where you can donate down in the description, like a PayPal and a Patreon. And with that, I think that I will keep you no longer, and I'll see you in the next one. If you liked the video, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't, maybe leave a comment to help that algorithm. And, yeah, that seems to be about it. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.